¿Listo? Bueno, buenas tardes para todos. Como todos los años, nuevamente es un gusto estar.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And particularly today and this year, I would like to tell you what we are seeing in the industry and the type of scenarios and solutions and projects that we are carrying out with our main clients and partners all over the Americas, which is representative of what's happening all over the world. When we see today's reality, the change of paradigms and in the software industry as providers and developers of technology, part of the change of paradigm is that the capacity for calculation and the data are everywhere. The calculation capacity independent of the device or wherever we are, and as well as the data generation. Just think of our daily lives and the impact of taking that capacity to a microwave. Or just look at PowerMind microwave that we saw last week. That's a change of paradigm in relation to the possibilities and opportunities and the potential. You can just see how every industry is changed by technology, from agriculture to retail, medicine, and so on, and how technology becomes part of our technology, our smart devices at home, how we can control the various devices, how can we can generate data, the technology, calculation data, all that is embedded everywhere. And I insist that generates a change of paradigm. And particularly, this has to do with the way companies approach this. They are challenged by changing and transforming their business and doing it digital. Now, that doesn't only mean adopting new technologies. It means definitely changing the set of skills, the set of capacities of an organization. It's no longer the area of technology that can adopt or create or what we really have to do is innovate and generate differentials for our industry, for our sector, for our vertical on the basis of technology. And this means that every company must be extremely skillful, extremely wise to know what technology to adopt and what technology to build. And I'd like to dwell on this. When we think about certain technological scenarios and we think about something that is this calculation capacity or storing or any other scenario that can be a bit more advanced, such as text classification, based on AI. These two scenarios are commodities. In neither of the two am I going to innovate. I have to be intelligent in adopting the skills that are capacities at present, the skills that at present the rest of the industry and the technological platforms are advancing and creating at a higher speed than me. But I must focus on building and innovating on those issues that are key issues for my own business so that I can segment my own clients in a more efficient manner. That's something particular to my own business and where I can build a differential. I should optimize a certain process, even if it's not something directly to my business. It's perhaps not a commodity, but something that can add a difference to my own business. Now, it is in this scenario where all companies are faced to the challenge of how to combine, on the one hand, their skills and knowledge of their own business. If I'm in retail business, I clearly know how to manage suppliers and how my customers behave, up to what I can see and my intuition. I probably know about logistics regarding retail. So I've got a certain advanced level of knowledge in my industry and in the vertical. Perhaps I also have some technological skills, but the true challenge lies with the fact that I have to take into account the state of the art of technology to maximize the value that I generate on the basis of technology, combining it with our present skills. And I would like to focus on this particularly because this challenge that all companies have, and we all know what the challenge is from the technological standpoint. First of all, how to keep abreast and keep technical teams updated, to be updated in terms of technology so that we can stand on that and make a difference. And so that's why for about a year and a half ago, we created a new organization in Microsoft where we specifically focused on working with companies to solve scenarios that are highly complex with a high impact together with these companies for differentiation. And we are an area, and that's one of the areas that I lead in the Americas. We are a 100% investment area. The only engagement that we ask for from the company that we work with, that they should sit together with us and work together, and that there is a clear goal ahead of us to be attained. And that's what we called engineering with. That is to work and develop and build together with our customers, which are leading companies in their own industries. And I said I would like to focus on several projects that I think are representative of the state of technology adoption in the Americas, but also being a benchmark for what's happening all over the world. This cross-cutting impact of technology, independent of the industry where we are. Look at rose plantation. This is one of the largest suppliers of rose in the world. Part of the process and part of the challenge, which historically has been manual, is to classify the quality of roses, both if they are mature or in terms of the quality once the flower is ripe. And we said that used to be manual, and then they moved on using AI, particularly computer vision, to classify, sort out the flowers. So the type of development took them to an accuracy level that was much below what they really wanted in order to improve their process. Therefore, we discussed with them that format of engineering together. Let's work together, engineer together, and develop together. We went out and worked with them. And there, we found out that there was one first version developed on the basis of neural networks. We started understanding how things were done. And whenever we thought of an AI scenario, there are several components. There's a component of training data with quality and availability of that data. And the other one is a more complex scenario where we have an AI project in a company. And the most complex issues and the ones that take the longest, instead of identifying the adequate data and cleaning them, sometimes we find that they're not adequate for the goals that we have set out at the beginning. Now, in this scenario, we found out that we had to clean the data and improve them. So part of it meant that we had to see that they had classified 7 different categories, and to do away with a paradigm that they needed 7. We said, why 7 instead of another number? Why 7? And so we used the algorithms of k-means to improve the clustering, and we detected that in fact with 5 categories it was enough. Now by cleaning data and by applying the clustering algorithm and moving down to 5 categories using Keras that maybe you know of, part of the open source world, and that was on TensorFlow, running on Azure. What we did was to improve going over 95% of accuracy and transform that solution that could be applied and that really was making a significant change in the production process. And that's the way now they are classifying flowers. And I'd like to highlight several points here in this case, because on the one hand, we did away with a paradigm, and at the time of using technology doesn't mean that we have to continue doing things in the same way we've been doing them before. That question of the 7 categories moving down to 5 categories. The fact that we can combine multiple technologies. I talked about TensorFlow, Keras, Azure, machine learning. Azure, Victor, for machine learning, that's a virtual machine that it's available in Azure. And once I get there, I say that what I want is a virtual machine learning machine. And it has Python, TensorFlow with CMTK and many other services. Is the pre-built virtual machine for a model data science. And so in this scenario, we applied computer vision, AI, to improve a business process significantly. I'd like to share another case with you in the financial services sector. This is a very common scenario. It's a call center. But with what goal? Well, in this case, the company wanted to analyze the audios from the call center. First of all, make a quality control of the calls. In the second place, on the basis of the audios, to infer new offers to be made to its customers. So far, the structure they had, every call was recorded as an audio file. Therefore, there was a batch processing, simplifying part of the scenario. The processing was batch, and that meant that working together with this company, as I said, we made a first analysis of the audios. And in fact, when you start analyzing these scenarios, you say, well, all right, moving from speech to text, where there are N technologies, Watson services, Amazon services, speech to text seems a very frequent scenario. Now, the reality is that complexity lies with details, and once you start analyzing audios and you start seeing that there are challenges where voices step on each other, the person from the call center and the customer speak at the same time, there is certain jargon, even if I speak in Spanish or in Portuguese, things that go away from the standard language. Changes of frequency in the voice of people generates enormous complexity, challenges both in frequency and in volume to process the audio. So all the first part of the project, and going back to what I said earlier, the pre-processing of data, the first part had to do with normalizing audios, generating certain spaces in audios and shorten other spaces in audios, because there's always an additional challenge here, and that is the project for the client must be as cheap as possible. And so if the spaces are too long, then the project is more expensive. So spaces had to be extremely optimized to be able to make the detection, but at the same time shorten them to minimize the cost, the processing cost. Then in this scenario, we've been able to exceed 80% of accuracy in detection and analysis of the conversations, identifying and transforming into text, that audio into text, so that we could analyze the text on the basis of, and here we come to the AI categories, to analyze it in text analytics and infer, first of all, the quality of the communication, detect incorrect inputs to trigger alerts and warnings, and to analyze the text and generate campaigns with targeted offers in marketing, specifically for a client. Now, if we move one step further in terms of complexity, now this is a retail scenario, And here we worked with 6 weeks with this company, because what they wanted was a bot. And I know that there have been several talks around bots. We all know several scenarios in bots. But this is the next generation of bots in terms of impact and in terms of complexity, in bots based on audios. This company was a leader in the retail segment, wanted the bot to answer the phone. And there were other restrictions. It had to be integrated in real time with Genesis, the central switchboard. They wanted to use Nuance from text to speech and speech to text. That's a company that is mainly focused on speech to text and text to speech for particular accents. They're extremely good in the Colombian accent or Chilean accent and so on and so forth. So they had already defined they wanted to use Nuance. Therefore, what we had to do in this scenario was to implement the bot infrastructure integrated to the switchboard, integrated to Nuance for speech to text and text to speech, and then analyze the text. And in real time, of course, because there's a person on the other on the other end waiting for the answer to the call, and have an interaction there. Now, the challenge lies with the details. How can you analyze latency when you have several systems interacting? Genesis, Nuance, Nexmo, bot framework, and Microsoft Lewis for natural language understanding and text processing. Now, to combine each one of these aspects to minimize latency was part of the challenge, not from the architectural standpoint, but from the standpoint of implementation to process audio and to optimize those audios and to optimize latency. And I want to highlight this issue as to how afterwards, magic lies with details. Now, it's very easy to see the diagram and to see which are the various building blocks or the components of the architecture that form part of the solution. Now, the detail of the implementation, to be able to have that minimum latency, security service levels, and so that the conversation is natural and fluent, is part of the complexity. And if we evolve a little bit more, the following case is from a company using GenNexus, and we've had several talks with them linked to this project, TNC Sports. It's from Argentina, and we are doing quite similar with NBC in the US. TNC had an enormous challenge, and has it still because it's part of its business, and they live with it, they put up with it. They produce 10 TV hours per day, and then they repeat it. Those 10 programming hours must be audited to audit the advertising shown at that time. And advertising can be shown in different ways, as a banner at the foot of the screen or a full screen. It could be advertising in terms of the journalist speaking, or it could be an image behind the journalist and partly covered by the journalist. So all those types of advertisements must be audited, because once they are audited, they can collect and make an invoice for that advertising. Until now, that was a strictly manual process, whereby several people had to watch hours of TV. I know that there are many people here who would love to have that job, but watch TV for hours to see what were the different types of advertisements in those 10 hours. Now, the magic lies with details, as I said, and they had to be able to detect when a journalist was saying something that wasn't part of the advertising, and to try to detect those advertisements that go beyond the paid advertisement. The journalist was invited to a restaurant for dinner, and he says something about it. Well, it's not part of the advertisement. So what we did was to combine multiple techniques. And when we see the list of scenarios that we've seen before. There are multiple complex scenarios. How can I identify the text at the foot of the screen? How can I identify the image when there is a full screen? How can I identify the image when the image is behind? How can I identify the journalist to see that that's advertisements? With some additional complex scenarios, because when I know that this is the advertisement I am expecting, it's clear, because when I want this advertisement to appear, the only thing I have to do is to validate it. But if I want to unprogram advertising, then that's far more complex, because something that I wasn't expected was really appearing, and it's fake advertising, let's say. We use open source as one of the specific frameworks to analyze the logos in the images. We use the wrapper of Open CV to seal it, why this solution was particularly developed in relation to the other one. We combine all this with a video indexer. That's one of the services of cognitive services, and that means that I can show a video, it extracts the text of the video, it can identify certain images, it can detail certain points in the video and some other points of technology. That's another technology that we combine. And text analytics, so that all texts, either because we were detecting the text on the screen or because it was the transcript of what the person was saying that was transferred to text and be analyzed in that way. Now, part of the challenge, and something that we've come across, is that any system at present of speech to text has failures. It could be 94%, 96%, and that's wonderful, but it's never 100% perfect. This means that when we made the transcript of what the journalist was saying, if I had to match it with the advertising that exactly had to be, the slogan the journalist had to say, since it wasn't 100% accurate, then it wasn't going to the text. The advertising was there because the text wasn't 100% perfect. I mean, the mention that had to be made with the transcript of the text. Now, in most cases, the way companies solve this is by making a human revision of transcriptions, but we wanted to minimize that process. We wanted to minimize it and to be able to automate it as much as possible. And so someone from the team had the idea of saying, well, but what happens if instead of having to identify the full mention, what we do is we apply keyword instructions on the mention, and we make a keyword extraction on a block of the text, and what we match is just that analysis. And that allowed us to improve significantly our precision, and that has to do with a change of strategy. We have to identify that what we had to match was not the complete mention, but on that mention we had to apply a further layer of text analytics and identify the presence of those keywords in the transcript. And that allowed us, after 5 or 6 weeks of work, to provide the full solution, end-to-end solution. Given this recording of the videos, we can analyze the 5 different types of advertisements mentioned at the beginning by combining multiple technologies. On the one hand, video indexer, OpenCV, text analytics. And this is the type of scenario on which we are focused. And I'm highlighting particularly the fact that the multiplicity of integration of technologies, in these 4 scenarios, which I've mentioned, there are services. I mentioned Azure. I mentioned TensorFlow, or the realities of the rich scenarios, are there integrating multiple technologies and multiple providers, as I said, in the case of retail, Nesmo, Nuance, Genesis, and multiple open source solutions. And this takes us, and if I could sum up what the scenarios, the most important scenarios are at present for the companies we are working with at all over the Americas and also at world level. If I had to sum it up and tell you, I haven't used the word trend or realities. Many times when we talk about trends, it's that we're looking forward and something is going to happen. Well, no, this is what's happening now at present in companies. And these are the various areas in the various technology domains where companies are looking for investments and to make a difference with the use of technology. Clearly, data scenarios, to analyze data. A very interesting project that we are working on is the media. Let's say it's the following generation of the media. Making analysis and reports in journalistic terms on the basis of data. Part of what they are doing is to build enormous data consuming public information coming from ministries and companies, so that all that information can be combined, and on that basis we can analyze it, analysis, and there's a very particular case that has to do with corruption scenarios, for instance, to relate property information with company information. And to combine all that, by combining all that information, we can trigger warnings, or we can find certain patterns that would be impossible to find out by a person reading all that. In that particular case, that's a data scenario using a particular type of technology, which is a scenario represented by graphs. Applied AI, and I am using the word applied because there is a lot to be said, and a lot is being said about AI. Computer vision, as we mentioned earlier, speech and voice, as we mentioned, text analysis, and even video analysis, both in real time or to batch. Scenarios of containers and serverless from the infrastructure standpoint and architectures standpoint. The serverless scenario and the scenario based on, in the case of Azure, based on functions that are hydrated to be executed at the time I need them. This is extremely rich scenario that allow us to do things from the architecture standpoint. And then IoT. We've been talking about IoT for a long time, and that's part of the magic lies with intelligent edge. The device that's on the edge to run a machine learning model on that processor. It's the device that it's in the culture of that sensor where we can place the intelligence to classify the flower on the edge and to put the sensor to be able to classify the flower at that time. With a shipping company, we are working on a project to measure each one of the movements of the ship when it's mooring, to improve the efficiency of the mooring capacity to download the containers, analyzing each one of the movements with over 500 sensors on a ship. That allows me to have the information, analyze it, and make some decisions in real time, and some other decisions post real time on the basis of the analysis of the behavior and movement of the ship. So it's within this scenario, when we think about the challenge that companies have at present to innovate on the basis of technology and to be different on the basis of technology, I think that for all of us, this is the approach we've taken. And I think that for all of us as important players in the technology industry, we have the responsibility for innovating with our customers. Just to be a technology provider, it's a second level. Our focus should be to innovate with our clients, to develop and build together with our clients. And at the end of the day, what companies are looking for is partners, accompany them in that process rather than companies that provide them with certain technology. That is the end. Thank you. And I'm at your disposal. I'm around if you have any questions. Thank you.